So, times of natural disaster and tragedy are not times to play politics. Unless, of course, your current president and vice president are MIA and your former president steps up to fill the giant gaping void.
I just spoke to Elon. I'm getting him. We want to get Starlink hooked up because they have no communication whatsoever. And Elon will always come through. We know that. And so we're working on that, getting them hooked up. They asked me whether or not that would be possible. We're going to try.
Have you reached out to President Biden about federal relief efforts?
No, I haven't reached out to him. No, I think he's sleeping right now, actually.
Well, in Joe's defense, he has yet another cold, and also he no longer gives a damn, let's just be honest. Maybe that's why being on the phone seems like a worthy excuse.
On the hurricane, Mr. President, why weren't you and Vice President Harris here in Washington commanding this weekend?
I was commanding. I was on the phone for at least 2 hours yesterday and the day before as well. I command. It's called a telephone. And all my security people.
As for Kamala, well, she spent the weekend getting that bag at San Francisco fundraisers. But when she was done with that, she was sure to tweet out a photo of herself hard at work, jotting down notes on a blank sheet of paper, listening in on a call, or maybe it was a Snoop Dogg mixtape with her wired earphones, which seemingly aren't connected to her visible phone. But I'm sure that she is and was on the case. Joining me now to defend it all is former Minority Leader Jeffries Communications Director Michael Hardaway. Okay, Michael, you got to explain it to me. Why would Kamala tweet out a photo of herself where she was jotting on nothing and listening to wired headphones that weren't connected to a dang phone? Michael, I think you might be muted, kind of like Kamala's phone, because I can't hear you.
Oh, that's awful.
There we go.
I apologize.
That's
I
okay.
I don't know who
Listen.
that delusional old man in the red hat was, but he's wrong on everything. The reality is that President Biden has been on the phone with every single governor of every affected state, and all those governors have acknowledged that fact, and they've said they have the resources they need thanks to the White House. And so the old guy in the red hat, again, he's delusional. He lives in a different world. He's talking about calling some South African billionaire and asking for help to get internet for people who just need to be rescued and get food and water. He has no idea what he's talking about. And regardless of where the vice president spent this weekend or the president physically was, they've been making sure the states have what they need. And that is a fact. The president is on the ground this Wednesday in North Carolina and South Carolina to make sure that things are going the way that they need to be. That's called leadership. Donald Trump has no idea what he's talking about, just like everything else he's ever been involved in, which has been a complete failure. He is a failure and should not be in this race because he's going to get destroyed on November the 5th.
Well, that's a pretty optimistic outlook from your perspective, but I will say this. Yes, several governors did acknowledge that Joe Biden did call them on the phone and offered resources, so I will give you that. Donald Trump actually went to Georgia, and I will push back against something that you said.
He went to a football game.
Well, yes, he went to a football game, which was an important football game, but the football game wasn't yesterday, and he was in Georgia yesterday.
The most unathletic man ever shows up at a college football game. No one wanted him there.
No one wanted him there, Michael. Come on. I know you don't.
I love college football. I was insulted. I hate Alabama and Georgia, but I was insulted for all those fans that were involved in this travesty. They had to go through mags and go through this hassle for this guy that just wanted a photo op. That's despicable.
Well,
and I say that as a college football fan, not as a Democrat.
Okay, well, you know, the college football fans, they wanted him there in SEC territory. They do love Donald Trump, and they wanted him to be there. I can't say the same thing for Tim Walz, who was booed when he showed up at a game. Other things that he did there.
Was that?
Well, when he went to the Michigan game, he was booed, but it's okay.
Come on.
Well, come on, it's the truth.
Tommy.
And he even tried to be the mascot, and they wouldn't let him. But I do want to point something out that you said going back to the hurricane. I know that you think that Elon Musk is just a South African billionaire. It's funny because everybody loved Elon Musk up until he started pushing back.
No one loves Elon Musk.
Oh, well,
Listen.
a lot of people love Elon Musk, but the people that are relying on Starlink because they cannot get services, Kamala, the $42 billion
What
for the
services can they get?
Well,
what can they not get that Elon Musk can give them?
Internet? I mean, internet communication so they can tell their friends and family where they are so that they can be rescued?
Just to be clear, all those governors are lying when they said that they have everything they need. Because that's what you're saying to me. If you're saying that Donald Trump who has no information in terms of any conversations that are being had at a governmental level, knows what he's talking about, then we're all saying those governors are lying, because those governors are saying they have everything they need thanks to the White House. So you tell me.
Well, there's been several folks that have said that the resources are slow to come. But I will say this.
Come on.
Well, come on. There are still people that are stranded in North Carolina.
The president got FEMA on the ground immediately. He said daily briefings with the head of FEMA in terms of what's happening on the ground. Donald Trump has no access to any of that information.
Well, he's not the current president. And actually, this isn't his duty and responsibility.
But every former president received a presidential daily briefing. And we know Donald Trump can't read. And the dimension in his brain doesn't allow him to process
Michael,
that information.
I know you're not going to make low blows like that and try to assert that Donald Trump can't read. I know that you
I don't know that he can.
I know that you're not that silly. I will say this, and we'll move off of it. Having an internet connection when you don't have an internet connection, because Kamala wasn't able to connect the broadband networks that she said she was going to do, $42 billion, no connectivity. But having internet via Starlink is important for people.
That's not the way it works, Tommy.
How is it not?
The White House allocated that money for rural internet. That is factual. That
but it didn't work. But it's not working. Nobody's connected.
Who says it's not working?
Well, the households that are not connected. $42 billion, and we don't have any households connected with that $42 billion.
So we're saying anecdotally there are a few people who don't have internet.
Not a few. I mean, look, no connectivity.
All I can say to you is that Donald Trump doesn't have any information about what's going on. So everything he says is he's just talking like everything else he ever does, where he talks about space lasers and these random things that don't make any sense. I'm only telling you what I know, which is the president has been on the phone with all these governors on a daily basis. He's heading there to North Carolina and South Carolina on Wednesday. And those governors say they all have what they need. Obviously, people need to be rescued. People need resources. That happens in every tragedy like this, which is why really, in a bipartisan manner, we should be able to work together to get this stuff done.
And there is a lot of bipartisanship going on, which I'm happy to see. But I will not let you downplay the importance of having internet connectivity for those who don't have it and need to communicate with their loved ones that are still stranded or unaccounted for.
I'm not downplaying anything, Tommy. What I'm saying to you is I can only go by what the governors of those states say.
Right. But the people in those states are saying we don't have connectivity, and we need connectivity because we need to be able to communicate with our family members who might still be stranded and have no way to get in touch with their loved ones and let them know where they are and if they're okay. But
we know there are cell towers in all of those places.
Yes, but they're not working. So that's why the Starlink is important. But Elon Musk is just a billionaire.
In what world do we trust Elon Musk, who's this trust fund baby from South Africa, who sucks the teat of the government with his government contracts for his businesses and lies every other word?
Michael,
come on, he has no credibility.
Well, let me tell you this. Thanks to Elon Musk, the two astronauts that your beloved federal government sent up into space, without Elon Musk, they're going to be stranded. So thank goodness for Elon Musk.
We're paying for that. You and I are paying for that as a taxpayer because
because you're just going to leave him up there. You're just going to leave him up there. You're just going to leave him up there because NASA and Boeing failed.
He's not using his own money. This isn't benevolence. It's government taxpayer money that's being used for SpaceX, right?
But they need to rely upon him because
NASA or
Boeing
anyone
and
else could
NASA's
do that
not
with
working.
that money.
Yeah, but they didn't because they left their astronauts stranded. I do want to ask you about something, though, that I think is maybe even more important than that because, the world is on fire right now. We've got breaking news coming out about strikes in Israel, ballistic missiles, very important things going on. We've got a port strike that I'm sure we want to get to. So we've got an election coming up. We've got a VP debate tonight. But what I think is really important is that Kamala is addressing the important issues like what her snack of choice is. Let's roll this hard-hitting interview.
One of my guilty pleasures, especially when I'm on the road, are my Doritos.
Oh, what flavor?
Nacho. Old school, original. Come on.
Yeah. OG.
Come on.
Red bag.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Red bag.
That's exactly. Got to have a napkin nearby. Right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we got to the bottom of that.
Were those Fox News reporters or were those former basketball players? I think she would get the same question from either one. And the reality is that I'm glad you brought up the fact that the world is burning because it is, right? And honestly, the vice presidential debate is coming up soon. That is immaterial. It doesn't really matter. No one votes for a president based on his vice president. But what should happen, honestly, is the two presidential candidates should have to have a conversation about how they're going to address the world that they're going to inherit in January, which you've got multiple pieces of chaos in the Middle East. You've got Sudan with the genocide. You've got the Congo with the genocide. You've got Haiti falling apart. You've got Venezuela falling apart. You obviously have the situation in the Ukraine. Half the world is on fire, and the American president, whoever it is going to be expected to lead on that front. I would love to hear Donald Trump have a policy conversation about that. I would love to hear Kamala Harris have a policy conversation about that. And really, as Americans, if we're going to lead in this next era in terms of all these things we're dealing with, we have to do it in a bipartisan way and in a smart way. I think that's the only way forward here.
Right. Well, the world is on fire, and I hate to remind you this, but it's not a Republican in charge right now. It is, in fact, a Democrat, Joe Biden, and his second in command is Kamala Harris. So I would love to hear her plan. I'd also love to see what she's going to do in the now, given she is currently in office. So it's interesting that she has really yet to address.
As it relates to what exactly? Maybe I can help you all here. So which of those things?
She is the vice president, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
So when we need to address the ongoing situation in which the world is crumbling, Kamala Harris is number 2 in command. So perhaps she could take a little bit of the time and maybe address some of these things in the now, rather than sitting down on podcasts talking about Doritos. But that might be a little too much to ask.
Tommy, I have an idea. Maybe we should have a presidential debate, except the old guy is afraid. Like Donald Trump is afraid to face this woman again. If we could have a debate, they could have this foreign policy conversation that Americans deserve to have. But this guy's running scared. He's hiding out of golf courses. He's certainly not in the gym. He's not doing anything meaningful to advance the ball for the American public. And so I would love if these two could get on the stage and have a debate and face these tough questions. But that's not going to happen because Donald Trump is afraid to face her again.
So here's my question.
She wiped the floor with him last time, and she'll do it again.
So here's my question. Do you think that this second debate, if it were to happen, which it looks like it's not going to, do you think it should happen maybe on a network like Fox News, since you guys really run the field on every other debate? You get to hand select.
What do you mean, you guys?
You guys, the Democrat Party, with your partners on MSNBC,
now we're whining
CNN,
about the platform?
CBS. Yes, absolutely.
You know what should happen, honestly? Foreign Affairs Magazine should host this and
Foreign
put it on all
Affairs
the networks.
Magazine?
Yeah, let's have some eggheads ask them real questions about policy conversations and differentiations that exist between the two, and let them talk about it from a policy perspective, not these stupid sort of general questions that you get in these debates, but really at a substantive level. What are you going to do about Venezuela and the Congo and Haiti and Lebanon and Gaza and all these other places at a substantive level? We should have that conversation. Fox News should be involved, as should ABC and CNN and MSNBC and all the others, but it's got to be an adult conversation. This sort of, people just throwing bombs to try to trip up a candidate is a complete waste of time. It doesn't help the voter at all.
Well, I will agree with you to that point. I thought ABC did a horrible job in the last debate, and that's probably why Donald Trump.
We can't complain about the refs. Only losers whine about the refs,
well,
right?
You've got to admit that when they don't fact check your girl one single time, you got to admit if you walked into
because he lied, every other word was a lie. So of course you have to fact check all those lies, right? If you can point out to me a specific lie that she had.
Well,
that
I'm so glad you asked, Michael. I'm so glad you asked, because
anything I can do for you, Tommy.
Okay.
Anything I can do.
Well, you mentioned this is so perfect. It's almost like you're reading my mind, because we're talking about foreign policy and we're talking about Kamala's lies. And in that previous debate, she told us that we don't have any troops serving overseas in an active duty role. And meanwhile, ding, 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 we certainly do. It's really unfortunate. Even ABC, after the fact, it took them a little while, they even had to fact check it. Of course, they wouldn't do it in real time.
I thought you said they didn't fact check her. Did they do it or did they not?
After the fact, Martha Raddatz had to do it on Sunday. On Sunday, the debate was on, I believe, a Tuesday.
You know what would have been interesting, Tommy? If your candidate, Donald Trump, was knowledgeable enough to, in real time, counteract that. But he didn't know because he has no knowledge because he doesn't read. But that would have been great, right? To be in a situation where she says something you think is false. Donald Trump, when it's his turn to speak, could correct that. But of course, he has no information because he doesn't read.
So Donald Trump is supposed to, let me get this correct, Michael. Donald Trump was supposed to debate on his own behalf. And then he was also supposed to serve as a moderator to fact check Kamala Harris in real time, while also debating the moderators.
That's what a debate is, actually. A debate is calling out your opponent on their lies. If you think something is a lie, it is your job as the person on the stage to call that person out and correct the record, right? You were on the high school debate team, weren't you, Tommy? Right?
So
that's what you do. So there you go. So yes,
Donald
he should
Trump
have
should
called
do
it out.
everything to everyone. He should have debated Kamala. He should have debated ABC. He really should have done everything.
If he can't take on ABC News reporters, how can he handle Vladimir Putin?
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, Michael. I'm glad that you brought that up, Michael, because what has it been now? Your candidate has done what? 3 interviews, and one she had
nothing. Those interviews mean nothing. You and I both know that.
But if she's supposed to take on Putin, she can't even take on the mainstream media.
They're
she
not
can't even
tough questions. They're just a waste of time. Listen, if we had, sort of the old guard of reporters, the Dan Rathers of the world asking real questions, okay, I'd give you that. But what we have is these stupid questions about what is your reaction to this thing Donald Trump said? That's not an interview, right? But that's what exists in the current climate, specifically with the White House press corps. And so saying that she needs to give these conversations where she can directly speak to the people the same way your guy Donald Trump did when he went on those YouTube shows a few weeks ago, that's the era that we are in. So let's stop pretending this is 1964 and the only way to communicate with voters is to go on television and answer questions. Because you and I both know half of those questions are garbage.
That is correct. I think one of the most garbage questions we've heard thus far is, what's your favorite snackety snack? But I'm sure that
Those
there
guys
is...
aren't even journalists. Come on.
You were correct.
Wait,
so
now
why
you're
isn't she
attacking two
sitting down
basketball
with
players on a
journalists,
podcast?
Michael? She's sitting down with NBA players talking about
Why
Doritos.
American basketball, Tommy. You're attacking 2 basketball players? Really?
No, it's not their job. It's just Kamala will only sit down with
Let me
folks.
ask you a question.
Okay.
And the YouTubers whose show that Donald Trump went on a few weeks ago, what were those questions? Were those serious questions? Of course not. So let's not pretend like journalists are the same thing as guys who have a YouTube channel. And by the way, the guys that have a YouTube channel have 1 million followers, and so they matter as well. But let's not also pretend that this vice president going on ABC or NBC or CBS is really meaningful, because at this point it's not really. Because you and I both know, again, that half of those questions are garbage. They're not real questions. They're not about substance. They want her to respond to something Donald Trump said or did. They want to sort of pass off these Republican talking points that your flacks feed to them, and they should. But it's not a good use of her time.
Well, I think asking about the economy was useful. The MSNBC interview in which she ducked and dived questions on the economy and simply talked about how...
Oh, can we talk about the economy? Let's do that.
Please.
Let's do that.
Please, it's failing. It's failing.
All right, so listen, hold on. Let's just talk about this. So you have 15 million plus jobs delivered by this administration.
Wow.
You've got historically low unemployment delivered by this administration. You've got historically high entrepreneurship and new businesses opening under this administration. You have a litany of firsts. You've got historic highs with the Dow and S&P 500 week over week, month after month, that have never happened before. My friend, all of your pension portfolio and your portfolio in general is crushing it thanks to Joe Biden.
So here's my question for you, Michael, and I want you to...
But is that true or is it not?
No, it's not, because real wages are down.
Tommy.
You tell the American people that things are hunky-dory for them. Yeah, real wages are down.
What sort of elitist... Wait a minute. Wait, let's back up. Let's put your elitist terms aside. Let's focus on what I just said.
Okay.
Is your portfolio up today versus 5 years ago?
Do you know that people can't afford their... Michael, people can't afford their groceries because inflation is still high. The prices have gone up. Their wages have not...
Inflation is less than 3%. Thanks for bringing that up. Inflation is less than 3% today. 2 years ago, it was 9%. Right? Yes. It's less than 3% today because of the Inflation Reduction Act, which this White House delivered. So yes,
you think things are going well right now? So, Michael, I just want to ask...
Prices aren't too high, but they're falling.
They're not falling. They're not falling. The prices are not falling. The prices are not falling. The prices are not falling.
Groceries, the prices of groceries are falling.
Not falling. No. Inflation is cooling. No, Michael. Inflation is cooling,
okay,
but prices are not falling. Prices are not falling.
Inflation is less than 3% today. Is that right? Is that fair?
Inflation is cooling, meaning it's not increasing.
No. So
but
inflation
prices
is falling.
Are not going down. They're stagnant.
But that's just not true, right? The BLS released these statistics on a regular basis. The price of groceries is falling. Not enough, but it is falling. The price of a new car has fallen. Not enough. But these things are falling. They're not falling fast enough, in part because of price gouging, which the White House has
I
addressed.
hope we get back into... You know what? Let's just fix the prices. You know what? While we're at it...
Wait a minute. Price gouging and price fixing are two separate things. No one's talking about price fixing.
Well, Kamala
right?
did.
But you have American companies which have admitted that they have set prices in an artificial way that are artificially high. That is factual.
So Kamala should set the prices.
Is that what I said? No one said that, honestly. Like, price fixing is a thing that Republicans say because they don't want to address the issues that real Americans have to face.
So what's she going to do then to prevent price gouging?
Well, the first thing she should do, right? So there are multiple pieces here. The first thing that has to happen is she should have a conversation with the CEOs of this organization and track the prices that they have for American goods. And they should be able to explain why certain prices are rising. There's a correlation always, right? So for instance, during COVID, prices rose. Why? Because there was a shortage in the supply chain and a cutoff in some capacities. So smaller inventory, higher prices. That makes perfect sense. That was fixed thanks to this White House. So the question is, why are prices rising? These are things that American corporations and all corporations should be able to justify to consumers. It's not about price fixing. It's about, if this costs X on this date and now costs Y, can you explain to me from a functional perspective why that is? And every company should be able to do that.
Everything is more expensive. Their fuel's more expensive.
No, that's not the way the world works. That's not the way the world works. First of all,
it sure is,
wait,
Michael. Because
everything is more expensive is not a way to explain price fixing. That's just not, right?
I don't want to do
always
price fixing. I don't want to do price fixing. That's not a tenet of my party.
I'm an economist. I studied economics. I'm telling you,
maybe you
that
can
things
help
don't just
Kamala
happen.
out. I have a question
It's the way that
for you.
things work.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Right now, we're on day 1 of a port strike. Once again, your administration has failed us. But, you know, it's really interesting to me. How so? Because we have a port strike. So your administration...
So you're blaming the White House because of a disagreement between workers and industry?
You don't think that the White House should play any role in intervention?
I'm just asking you how you blame them. I'm happy to answer the question.
Well,
I'm asking you about the correlation
you don't think that Joe Biden should have stepped in here at all when people are going to be suffering and prices are going to continue to go up and people are going to be continually gouged because of a port strike? You don't think this administration... I'm glad you asked me
that question. All right, so let's talk about this.
Oh, first I want to play a clip first. I have a clip. Oh, okay. I love clips. We got to play one. Joe Biden's Commerce Secretary, unfortunately, she's not too updated on the commerce. Maybe they should have had you, but unfortunately they're saddled with her. Let's take a listen.
Where have you been kind of focused and hearing on what would happen if the strike goes, let's say, longer than a week?
Again, I have not been very focused on that.
You think it's interesting that she's not very focused on that, given her role?
Yeah, I got no answer for that one. I can only tell you what I know, which is this strike is about two things. It's about wages and it's about technology, right? The workers want higher wages. And they also want the companies to not use artificial intelligence and just really use machinery to replace their jobs. What we have to do really is address this in a larger and in a bipartisan way, because this issue is going to continue to pop up as the years go on. You have technology, and there has to be a way to employ people while also not standing in the way of progress. We cannot be in that situation where you don't allow progress to move forward and efficiency to move forward. That has to happen. Also, you have the question of wages. I think the reality is that the White House has a step in here because you have Christmas coming up. You have the holidays coming up. You can't have a stoppage in goods going back and forth, right? Like, Tomi needs her 74th pair of shoes. That needs to happen for Christmas.
Are you assuming? Wait, Michael.
I'm not assuming.
Wait.
I'm telling you.
Are you assuming that because I am a woman that I have an affinity for shoes?
I didn't say because anything. I said Tomi. I didn't say that woman.
That's quite sexist of you. That's quite sexist of you,
I didn't say that
Michael.
woman. I said Tomi, and I'm not wrong. But here's the thing. So here's the thing, right? In a bipartisan way, honestly, the White House and Congress should work together to address these at a higher level, right? In terms of how will technology and construction and port work, how will that reconcile itself over the next 50 years? Because these are going to keep happening. This is not a one-off. And so, yeah, I do think the White House should step in and address this in a real meaningful way. But I think in a bipartisan way, we should come together and say, all right, this is going to be an issue in America. And by the way, other countries are addressing this, so we can't afford to fall behind by not addressing it. And so, yeah, I think the White House should address this in the short term. In the longer term, in a bipartisan way, we should come together and figure out how to reconcile the relationship between labor and technology.
I don't disagree with your point, but the White House, the Biden administration, has not stepped in. Biden was on record. I mean, there was some weird things he said over the weekend. They asked him about the strikes in Yemen, and he talked about collective bargaining. So I don't know if he's going to collective bargain with the terrorists.
Let me help you out a little bit.
Okay.
I'll help you out. The president just put out a statement about an hour ago, essentially coming down on the side of the workers and talking about the rise in productivity, the rise in corporate profits, the rise in executive pay that hasn't been reflected in worker pay. So I think his position there is just going to be, he's with the workers in terms of them wanting higher pay. I don't know how this turns out, but again, Tommy, here's the biggest problem. We keep having to talk about this in a partisan way and all these larger issues we face as a country. And the only way out of this is to work together and come up with some sort of bipartisan solution that doesn't focus on short-term answers or short-term elections.
I don't disagree with you there, but I will say it is the responsibility and the duty of the current administration to tackle these things because they have the power to do so. Joe Biden did not want to enact Taft-Hartley, and whether you think that's good or bad, he had the ability to put a pause on this, to get people through the holidays, to hopefully come to a resolution. He chose not to. So people are going to suffer because of this. If this strike goes on much longer, our economy is going to suffer because of this, and people are going to not be able to afford things, especially coming up on our holiday season. And now we have a natural disaster as well. People are struggling there. I want to move on to another thing, and I can't wait to hear your defense of this one. So I know you're gonna, I cannot wait for how you're gonna spin this one. But the ICE numbers that were released last week before Kamala Harris went to get her photo op at the border, about the hundreds of thousands of criminal aliens roaming our streets that are on the docket, but they're non-detained. What do you say about that, and do you think it's acceptable?
First of all, let me thank you for bringing this up. There are two very important parts of this conversation. The first is border crossings today at a 4-year low, directly because of the executive order put forth by this White House that limited the number of people who can come over for asylum. That is a direct result. So a 4-year low for border crossings are where we are now. But there's a larger conversation here. Every single person who came across our border illegally over the past 10 months is directly tied to Donald Trump, because he killed the bipartisan bill that would have shut down the border and create a real process. These are Donald Trump's people.
That bipartisan border bill,
all of them,
by the way, gave the president the power to shut down the border, which he already has the power to shut down the border.
No, he does not. No, he does not. As I said, this bipartisan bill, which Donald Trump killed, would have shut down the border and created a real process. Again, this is what's wrong with the Republican Party. We can't have larger solutions.
It expedited.
We keep talking about these like day-to-day, week-to-week things.
Parole.
It would have shut down the border, and then we wouldn't be dealing with this issue. But Donald Trump didn't want that. And by the way, he undercut his own party, right? And so if
my party didn't want
Joe Biden, if I'm Kamala Harris, how can I work with Senate Republicans or House Republicans?
My party didn't want to normalize 2 million illegals across the border and call that a good day.
I just want to know why Donald Trump didn't want the border shut down.
I can tell you.
I want to know.
Well, I can tell you why, because that bill was garbage and it normalized 2 million illegals a year.
Did you read the bill, Tommy? Did you read it? Because I actually read it. Okay. Right? And I know Donald Trump didn't read it, by the way. So what I'm saying to you is that it would have shut down the border and created a process.
What's the process? Mass parole.
Why didn't Donald Trump, my question is, why didn't Donald Trump want that to happen?
Because he doesn't want mass parole of illegal aliens. Is it because there's an election
coming up and he wanted to be able to run?
Well, I'll tell you this. We do want to run on this issue because we want mass deportations. We want to shut down the border.
Why don't you want the border? Why don't you want like a safe and orderly America? That's what I would
You mean get them in faster, release them quicker. That's what you want. Get them in faster, release them quicker. So I'm going to ask you again. So I'm going to ask you again. I'm going to ask you again about these ICE numbers. Hundreds of thousands of criminal illegal aliens are roaming our streets. Thousands convicted of homicide. Thousands convicted of sexual assault. Do you find that to be a problem? And how do you think this current administration should address that?
I mean, if that's true, that's shocking.
How is it not true?
Kind of reinforces the point that I'm making here, which is the border could have been shut down, and Donald Trump is the reason it was not.
Your administration does not want to deport
these people
anybody.
Are criminals and they're roaming the streets, as you said, and stealing our dogs and sort of raiding our houses. Why would Donald Trump not want that to stop?
That border bill did not address.
There was a bipartisan effort that would have stopped that. That's a fact.
I'm gonna give you.
There's a bipartisan effort that would have stopped that. Donald Trump prevented that from becoming law.
Michael, I'm going to put the bipartisan border bill aside. And I'm going to talk about.
No, I don't want to put it aside. It's an important part of this conversation.
You made your point about it. We disagree. I thought that bill was junk. So we're going to put that aside because at the current moment, it's dead. But I want to ask you about not only the hundreds of thousands of convicted criminal aliens that are in this country, but about the 10 million plus that came in under Joe and Kamala.
They're
What
tied
do you
together,
think?
Tommy. They're tied to.
They're
you can't
not.
separate peanut butter and jelly.
What part
right?
of the border
if you're saying
bill?
That
What
these
part of
people
the
are
border
criminals
bill dealt
and they're
with
roaming the streets,
deportation?
what I'm saying to you is that Donald Trump said, "Let them come." Donald Trump said, "Let them come." Donald Trump said, "Open the border and keep it open so I can run on this for the election."
No.
That's what Donald Trump is saying.
No, that's not
right?
what Donald
There
Trump
would be a
said.
process
Michael,
that would have stopped that.
That
So if you're
there is
saying
nothing.
that criminals
What part
coming
of
in,
Michael?
if you're
what,
saying criminals are coming in, that would be a problem. So I would want
They are
those criminals
coming
to
in.
stop coming in.
I would like him
Donald
to stop.
Trump is saying, "Let them come."
Whatever you want to say. So what part of the bipartisan border bill dealt with the hundreds of thousands of criminal illegal aliens already in our country?
Where are you getting that number from, by the way?
ICE.
Can you give me the specific one?
ICE. I'm going to put up the graphic again.
I said hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands. 7 million on the non-detained
Yeah.
docket for
I
removal.
can only tell you what I read this week from the Border Patrol, which said that border crossings are at a 4-year low. That is
Why are
factual.
they-
The next thing I would say to you is,
Okay.
if we're saying these people are criminals, that would be a problem. We don't want criminals in our country.
But they are.
Question to you would be, if these people are criminals, if all these people are problematic, why wouldn't Republicans work with Democrats in a bipartisan way to stop that? That
Are
actually
you guys
happened
ready to work
when
on a
Donald
bipartisan
Trump
way to
killed that
mass
effort.
deport all the criminal aliens out of this country?
Donald Trump is not
No,
going to
no,
mass
no.
deport anyone. It's just another one of his lies, right?
Why wouldn't he?
What's true is that we could have stopped all of that, and that would have
We could not have
today
stopped
not
the
existed, not
bipartisan border bill would do nothing to
The
address
bipartisan border bill would have shut down the border, right?
after
So if you're
5,000
saying-
come in on
If you're
average.
saying these people are coming across the border and that's a problem, okay, all right, fine. So let's stop it. Donald Trump said, "No, I want to be able to run on this in the election. Let them keep coming," right? It's a failure just like everything else he's done, just like these $100,000 watches that he's slinging to old ladies on TV and everything he does. There's corruption in everything he does. The $7.8 million he made while president from foreign governments, everything he does is a fraud. And this is just another one. I agree with you. We shouldn't want criminals in our country. So if that is the case, let's shut down the border and have an
What about
orderly process
deportations?
that's done in a bipartisan way. But Donald Trump didn't want that.
What
You and
about
I both know
Michael, what about
that he
deportations?
doesn't even know what mass deportations means, nor can he spell it, nor can he explain from a policy perspective what that's going to be. You and I both know that, right? And
Do
so,
you want to deport
yes,
anybody?
let's work together in a bipartisan way, but we can't be in a situation where Donald Trump is just killing that effort when it's done.
Okay. So deportations, are you in favor?
That doesn't mean anything. Like my question to you is,
No.
deportations is not a strategy.
No,
right?
it is
Tell
a
me your
strategy.
strategy and I'll tell you whether I agree.
My strategy is let's take all of the people who are, let's start with the criminals first. Let's start with these hundreds of thousands of criminal aliens
And Donald
and the
Trump
tens
let
of
into the
thousands.
country the last few months.
No,
Got it.
no,
Okay.
Donald Trump didn't let all these people into our country, sir.
Sure he did.
10 million did not come
By
in
killing
under
the
Donald
effort.
Trump.
By killing
Okay.
the bipartisan effort, Donald Trump let them in. He said, "Come on into our country. I got an
Michael,
election to win. I want to be able to run on that."
Michael, I know that you, even in the talking point you're trying to sling at me right now, I know
It's not
that
a
you
talking
don't
point.
really believe. I know that you
Tommy.
don't really believe that these hundreds of thousands and then 10 million all came in since the
By
bipartisan
the way,
border
you're just
deal.
sort of slanging numbers. I don't know where the numbers come from. I can only tell you what I know to be factual, which is
Okay.
we have to have order at our border. I agree with you on
Yeah.
that, right? It's got to happen in a bipartisan way. I don't know whether you think that, but both of those things are agreed to by the majority of the House and the Senate and the White House, and that deal was done where the border would have been shut down. And so anyone who's a criminal or anyone that could have been problematic for our country could not have gotten into the United States today,
You do
except
realize
Donald Trump
that-
came in with this cape and let these
Michael,
people
you
keep
do
coming
realize,
through.
though, that bipartisan border bill didn't shut down the border. It shut down the border after
Listen to what I'm saying
5,000
to
came
you.
in.
It gave the president the authority, right? The president
After
currently does not have the authority.
5,000 people
And
came in over a
how many-
5-day
let me ask you a
period.
question.
On
When Donald
average,
Trump killed that
5,000 a
bill-
day.
So you're saying 5,000, right? So my question to you is, how many have come in since Donald Trump killed that bill? And how many of those people were criminals?
Well, we don't know how many are criminals. A
So
lot
we
of them
should
are
thank Donald
gotaways.
Trump for letting these people in, correct?
So
Right? I mean,
you,
theoretically,
so
if he
Donald
killed the
Trump let
effort,
them in. Yeah, Donald Trump's the president right now, Michael. You
I
got
think
it.
he was standing I think he was holding the gate open saying, "Come on in." That's the way that I remember it.
Oh, I got to give it to you. You are good at this. And he can't read and he can't write, and you got it.
I mean, I'm just a simple guy pointing out what I see. I don't trust the guy. I don't think he's got the capability to get any of this stuff done. And by the way, he's shown us that. He's shown us that in his previous presidency. I was on the Hill when COVID started, and he completely bungled that entire process. Bungled it. He had no idea. His White House had no idea how to deal with that. It's going to be the same thing if he wins again with this crisis in the Middle East and around the world. We can't afford that.
Well, to be fair, Michael, we didn't have these problems for the 4 years that Donald Trump was president. So
he inherited the greatest economy in 20 years, and he ruined it. The guy ruined it.
He ruined it. Yeah, that's
Let me ask you a question, Tommy. What was better in Donald Trump's economy than is currently better today?
Inflation.
Not true. Next.
You're going to really try to tell me that inflation was higher under Donald Trump than it was under Joe Biden?
Inflation is less than 3% today. My question to you is
You
what was
said
better than it is now? I said today. My question is what was better? The answer is nothing.
Inflation, real wages.
It's not true, Tommy. First of all, can we point something out? The inflationary rate that Donald Trump inherited had nothing to do with any policy he put in place. I always have this conversation.
Why was it low under Donald Trump?
Because Barack Obama presided over the greatest economic record in 20 years.
So then what happened? What happened when Joe came in? Why did it go so high under Joe? Why?
Again, I mean, I'm happy to explain this to you. The reason it went higher is that he inherited a COVID economy where the previous president,
he inherited
Donald Trump,
really low
did
inflation.
Nothing. He literally did nothing. And by the way, let me just answer that. There was a bottleneck in the supply chain that initially drove up prices and created this inflationary market. That is accurate, which is why the White House created this supply chain commission to address that. So that's why it initially went up, is because of COVID, and Donald Trump did nothing to address that at the beginning of the pandemic.
Do you agree?
And I'm not saying this as a Democrat. I'm just saying this factually.
So we shouldn't have shut down our economy because of COVID.
I didn't say anything about shutdown. I don't even know what you're saying to me. What I'm saying to you is Donald Trump inherited an incredible economy. He left garbage, right?
Okay.
As it relates to COVID and how that was addressed, he completely fumbled it, which is why Joe Biden inherited what he inherited.
In what way did Donald Trump fumble COVID?
All right, I'll give you an example. We had a call with the vice president and this COVID commission that Donald Trump had put together. And it was with all the members of Congress. And on that call, they were asked simple questions like, where are your assets to address this? What is the plan? They didn't have a plan, right? This is like 5 or 6 months into COVID. They had no plan. That's unheard of, right? The greatest country in the world, you've got idiots running the White House under the Trump administration during COVID, and that's why things developed in the way they developed. That is factual.
I have a feeling that you probably like that vaccine, though. Personally, I didn't.
Why do you keep jumping around? Like, I answer your questions, I give you a great answer, you're like, yeah, okay. All right, but I got another thing.
Because
all right, so let's talk about the vaccine. So why do you want grannies to die? I want grannies to live, right?
So you like Donald Trump's vaccine?
I want grannies to win, or I want grannies to live, so I took the shot, right? Donald Trump suggested that people take bleach to cure themselves.
I know you're not going to lie about that. That's another debunked lie. Now tell me Charlottesville.
People died. Okay, so tell the families of the people that died that that's a lie. Tell them.
That what's a lie? Do you think people
Donald
really...
Trump told people to take bleach. That is factual. He did.
You don't really believe that.
I know what came out of his mouth. I don't know why you don't believe
that. You really believe that Donald Trump is instructing people to inject bleach.
What is this world you guys live in? Honestly, Tommy, I don't understand one thing. Donald Trump is a moron. We all know that, right? But you're a smart person. I got friends that are Republicans that are very smart people. And you guys pretend like he's not a moron, right? Just listen to the words that come out of his mouth. He's talking about space lasers. He's talking about windmills, cause cancer. He's insane, right? We had this very long conversation about Joe Biden's mental acuity, which was fair. Donald Trump is nearly the same age and clearly has some real deterioration in his brain that we should talk about. If you just look at the words that he says, none of them make sense. He patches together these very random things that create no real conclusion to the things he's talking about. We have to admit that.
Okay. Well, you see something different than I do. But I wish we could go longer. I do have to go. I always appreciate our spirited debate. We live on completely different planets. We see things completely differently. But I can't wait for Kamala's deportation plan. But thank you, Mike.
Until the next time.
Yes, until the next time. I will talk to you soon. I always appreciate the passion. And good luck to Timmy Walls tonight.
Take care.
All right. Folks, I'm exhausted. Tonight is a big night for Tim Walz, and if he doesn't come out on stage with his signature rocket kicks, I'm going to be real disappointed. It's time for final thoughts. Tonight is a big night for Kamala's emotional support mascot, Tim Walz. He will face off against Senator and Trump running mate J.D. Vance in his first big debate, moderated by CBS and, of course, simulcast on Fox News. Now, some folks say debates, particularly VP debates, don't matter much to voters, but I beg to differ because, first of all, let's keep in mind the Trump-Biden debate, the one that ended Joe's career, pulled in roughly 50 million eyeballs, while that Pence-Harris VP debate of 2020 drew an estimated 57.5 million viewers. All debates matter, and that should probably make Tim Walz very nervous. I think CNN's Scott Jennings really summed it up perfectly. Watch.
Well, first of all, I don't find them to be consequential. Second of all, Walz is a buffoon. I'm sorry. This guy, he's the only school teacher in America who brags that none of his students can get into an Ivy League school. He's had one consequential press interaction with our Dana Bash, who asked him about the fabrications in his own resume, and his answer was essentially, me no understand words good. I mean, he's a buffoon. He's on a free ride for running under Harris. He gets very little press. They don't let him talk to the press for a reason. I want one thing out of this debate. I want J.D. Vance to go out there and get under his skin. He has legendary hot, short temper. A lot of governors do, but apparently he does. I want J.D. Vance to go out there and have him explain why he is denigrating J.D. Vance's story. Small town America ends up making something better out of his life, which is something we should want for every kid.
Well, Scott is right. The cutesy leg kicks and Midwest folksy bit worked for a couple of weeks, but then the real Tim Walz started to creep through, and well, that's probably why even the Hide and Kamala campaign has gone to even greater lengths to hide Timmy. But don't take my word for it. Even the left-leaning Atlantic has noticed Tim's bubble wrap. The guy is just an odd bird, and I, as a Midwesterner, am pretty insulted that he passes off his persona as a Midwest thing. You know, my dad was born and raised in a small ranching community in South Dakota, and I can promise you neither he nor any man he grew up with has ever done a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader kick, not once, not ever. Pete Buttigieg, though, has reportedly been playing the role of J.D. Vance in Walz's debate prep. As transportation secretary, perhaps he should be spending his time and energy focused on the port strike, but hey, I guess prepping Tim is more of a priority. Good luck tonight, Tim. You just do you. Those are my final thoughts. You can catch my post-debate reaction tonight across our Outkick socials. Also on Fox Nation, Clay Travis and I, along with Morgan Ortegas and Pete Hegseth, will be hosting a live reaction pre- and post-show. Also, please be sure to tune in live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern for this show and catch full episodes on Fox Nation whenever you like. Also, please support us and like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.